Good morning. Welcome to this recorded sermon for Sunday, September 24th, 2023. My name is Bob Malone. I'm the pastor here at Mount Vernon Presbyterian Church in Alexandria, Virginia, and on behalf of our entire congregation, as always, welcome. This morning, I am finishing up a four-part sermon series titled Family Matters, and today's reading comes to us from the 24th chapter of the Old Testament book of Joshua. Listen now for what God's Spirit is saying to you today. Now therefore revere the Lord and serve God in sincerity and in faithfulness. Put away the gods that your ancestors served beyond the river and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. Now, if you are unwilling to serve the Lord, choose this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your ancestors served in the region beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. The people answered Joshua, "Far be it from us that we should forsake the Lord to serve other gods. For it is the Lord our God who brought us and our ancestors from the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery, and who did those great signs in our sight. God protected us all along the way that we went, and among all the peoples through whom we passed. The Lord drove out before us all the peoples, the Amorites who lived in the land. Therefore we will also serve the Lord, for he is our God." But Joshua said to the people, "You cannot serve the Lord, for he is a holy God. He is a jealous God. He will not forgive your transgressions or your sins. If you forsake the Lord and serve foreign gods, then he will turn and do you harm and consume you after having done you good." And the people said to Joshua, "No, we will serve the Lord." Then Joshua again said to the people, "You are witnesses against yourselves that you have chosen the Lord to serve him." And they said, "We are witnesses." He said, "Then put away the foreign gods that are among you, and incline your hearts to the Lord, the God of Israel." The people said to Joshua, "The Lord is our God, the one we will serve, the one we will obey." So Joshua made a covenant with the people that day, and made statutes and ordinances for them at Shechem. Joshua wrote these words in the book of the law, and he took a large stone and set it up there under the oak tree in the sanctuary of the Lord. Joshua said to all the people, "See, this stone shall be a witness against us. For it has heard all the words of the Lord that he spoke to us. Therefore it shall be a witness against you if you deal falsely with your God." So Joshua sent the people away to their inheritance. Friends, this is the word of the Lord and the poetry of the faithful. Thanks be to God. The book of Joshua is one of the most important books in the Bible because it marks a turning point for the people of God. No longer a pilgrim band of spiritual vagabonds, nomads without a permanent home. The book of Joshua is all about the Hebrew people settling in what is present-day Israel. After years of slavery in Egypt and then wandering around in the wilderness, what is often referred to as the Promised Land is invaded and conquered. And under the leadership of Joshua, Israel is born. The Hebrew people finally have a homeland. So as one might now expect, In gratitude for this blessing, Joshua encourages the people to respond with a deeper sense of faithfulness, a more consistent obedience, a greater commitment. And that's the promise that the people make. They swear an oath, not only that they will be obedient to God, but their entire household will be as well. In one of the most well-known verses of the Old Testament, Joshua boldly declares to the people, y'all need to decide who you're going to serve, God or something else. But as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. And so the people willingly and gladly follow Joshua's lead. They say that they're going to do the same thing. Now it is no coincidence that these families declare their faithfulness to God at the same time that the Hebrew nation or village is being formally established, because the two go hand in hand, and both are important. We need both our homes and our villages to support us as we seek to be the people of God. And Joshua knows this. I know we considered the topic back in week 1 of this series, but it deserves to be mentioned one more time this morning. Because in the first part of this morning's passage, we're told that the God of the people's ancestors has not been forgotten. And the people need to hear a call to commitment. For good or for not, the people who go before us shape us. They have a strong impact upon our faith. We remember the faith of those who has gone before us. But this morning, I want to bring this series to a conclusion, not by challenging us to consider the faith of those who have gone before us, but rather to be mindful of the faith that we are displaying for those who will follow us. Having considered the importance of the village 3 weeks ago, then in week 2, considering how we're called to remain committed to our families through good times and in bad, and then finally last week, acknowledging that how our families look is nowhere near as important as how our families love. This morning, we're going to conclude this series by considering our own commitment to our families and to our God. We're going to consider the faith that we are passing along and whether or not we are modeling a commitment to the faith. How are we showing our families what it means to be people committed to Jesus Christ? Are our homes really serving the Lord? Parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, friends, neighbors, teachers, coaches, what kind of faith are we modeling for the children in our lives? And what are we teaching them about commitment? For those of you who have children of your own, I recently heard someone say that 75% of the time that we are ever going to spend with our kids is over by the time they turn 12 years old. Let that sink in. 75% of the time that we are going to spend with our children is over by the time they are 12 years old. And 90% of all the time we are ever going to spend with our children ends by the time they are 18. That's why these questions are so important for us. We need to be mindful of the words of Scottish poet Robert Burns. There is always a child among us taking notes. What are they seeing in our lives? What kind of commitment are we putting on display for them? And this is especially important in light of the second half of this morning's reading. Because what was true then is still true today. I don't know about you, but when I read and reread that passage, it's pretty obvious that Joshua doesn't quite trust their commitment. He hears what they're saying, but he keeps pushing them as if to make sure they really understand this profession of faith, that they and their households really are going to serve the Lord. Listen to the way Eugene Peterson paraphrases the passage in The Message. If you decide that it's a bad thing to worship God, then choose who you'd rather serve. But as for me and my family, we'll worship God. And the people answered, count us in. We too are going to worship God. But Joshua says to the people, you can't do it. God's a holy God, a jealous God. So you can't worship God and at the same time be fooling around and sinning. But the people told Joshua, no, we will worship God. And so Joshua says, okay, but you are going to be witnesses against yourselves. So you better get rid of all those foreign gods you have with you. And the people answered, we will. We will worship God. What God says, we will do. The people, they keep telling Joshua that they're going to be faithful. But Joshua seems to have his doubts, doesn't he? You see, he knows how easy it is to say one thing, but then do another. It was true then, and it is still true today. When I think about family matters, I think about the importance of the village. I think about loving our families even when it's hard. I think of recognizing and accepting the fact that what is more important than how our families look is how our families love. But most importantly, when I think of our families today, I think of our commitment to God. Joshua urges us all to count the cost of professing our faith and then being really ready to live it out. Especially when there are so many aspects of our culture tempting to take us in a different direction. Think about your commitment to both your families and to God, and then consider all the things that weaken or water down or muddy these commitments. Work and job responsibilities. They constantly threaten to distract us from what is most important in our lives, our families. And yes, things have certainly changed over the past 20, 30, 40 years. Parents do seem to be learning to set appropriate work and family boundaries, but we still need to be reminded that shaping the faith of the children in our lives is one of the most important responsibilities we have. And if they don't see commitment, in our lives, chances are pretty good they will not have any kind of commitment in their own. Anger, violence, they also challenge the messages of patience and forgiveness that are so central to our faith. And this anger that is so prevalent among so many today is more than not a result of fear. Psychologists and sociologists point out again and again that anger is a defense mechanism to our fears. And so we can only address the anger and violence that we see in our world when we learn how to better address and help people deal with their fears. Fears which, by the way, are so often unfounded and unnecessary. Selfishness. That too is right up there on the list of things that challenge our commitment. Selfishness is huge today. And I'm not talking about the selfishness of our children, because sadly, it is the selfishness on the part of us adults that should concern us. I know we like to think that it's the children in our families, in our world, that are only thinking about themselves, but I'm not sure that is anywhere near as problematic as adults who only think about themselves, their happiness, their pleasure, their well-being. Self-sacrifice is almost anathema to people today. And yet that is what was so central to the life of Jesus. Cultivating commitment must also include self-sacrifice. And selfishness makes that impossible. Lastly, I certainly have to mention social media as one of the greatest obstacles to our commitment to our God, our commitment to our village, our commitment to our families. I know that it's being bashed everywhere today, and often with good reason. But social media isn't going away. And so we need to learn how to deal with it. It becomes problematic when it is used to mask the problems and the struggles with which we are all dealing. Life is more than beautiful sunsets that we enjoy when we're on vacation in the Bahamas, or that incredible meal we had on Friday night when we went out to dinner. Family is hard. Commitment is hard. And if we didn't already know that, we saw it 2 weeks ago in worship right here when we asked people to stand so we could pray for their families. The number of people who stood up was remarkable. And when social media is in any way used to mask the realness of our lives, when it's used as a way of pretending, when it puts us on guard because we're always concerned that someone might find out what's really going on in our lives, when that happens, authenticity goes out the window. And that's when social media becomes so harmful, because it prevents people from really knowing us. And if we don't really know one another, I'm not sure we can ever really learn to love one another. Friends, the matters threatening our families today, the matters that are diminishing our commitment, well, I could go on and on. The cost of childcare, the speed of change, the pandemic, and all that resulted from that. Technology, family mobility, divorce, addiction, abuse. It is never ending. And let's not argue about whether or not these issues are new ones, or whether or not families have had to deal with them always. They still challenge us, regardless whether they're new or old. They still challenge us, and they make commitment extremely difficult. So we can't give up. We need to keep leaning on one another, trusting our village, and loving our families. And we need to stay in the church, warts and all. In this morning's story, Joshua offers a stone to the people as a witness as a witness to their personal as well as their family's commitment to serve the Lord. It was to be a reminder of their promise. Because who doesn't need reminders? If you are in the area, I hope you will, at some point this next week, stop by the church and pick up a stone from our communion table to remind you of your promise. If you're not in this area, find one outside. Pick it up. Run it through your fingers. Put it someplace where you will see it every day so that it might remind you of your commitment, not just to your family, but to our God. Excuse me. As you continue to reflect on the family matters of your life, don't give up, even when hard times come. Because just as God is faithful to you, God will be faithful to your families. May that stone remind you of your commitment to Jesus. And may that give you hope for your days. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you right back here next Sunday morning. Until then, friends, peace.